Welcome back, everybody. Hope you're having a good day. Well, today we're going to read a Dr. Seuss book about a moose. His name is Thidwick. The title of this book is Thidwick, the Big-Hearted Moose. And this particular book, the moose, he is, like it says, big-hearted moose. He's so nice, and other animals take advantage of him. But then he kind of lets them know towards the end about what he's going to do. Now, this is a 3.4 book, meaning it's the third grade, fourth month. So if you're on that reading level and you're with Renaissance Learning, your school takes tests on books with Renaissance Learning, then you can take this test. It is worth 0.5 points. So they're going to ask you some questions. You want to make sure you get them all right. So therefore, read this 3 times and have somebody ask you questions about this book. Now, before I start reading this book, as in some of the other videos, I have let you know that ahead of time, I will always let you know that some books aren't quite appropriate for younger children. So I mean, you know, if you're maybe first grade, kindergarten or younger, this book is probably not a good book for them to read. So parents, I please want you, if you haven't read this book before, please follow along in this video, and then you decide on whether your child should be reading this book with me and deciding from there. Because in some of Dr. Seuss's books, he's written this such a long time ago, and nowadays when you even mention anything that could lead to violence, it's not good. So they didn't have that back then. Back then, when he was writing his books, you could mention things and it was okay. Even when I was growing up, and I am nowhere near as old as Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss, if he was living today, would be 124, I believe, years old. So, or 120 something years old. So that's pretty old, and you know, just by looking at me, I am nowhere near that age. I know I'm up here, but not that old. And so when I was growing up, this book would have been fine for me to read. But as time progressed through the decades, more people were more prone to, oh, we shouldn't say these words, we shouldn't say these phrases or things like that, or anything that has to do with any type of violence or just the words of a violence. So this is what is in Thidwick, the Big-Hearted Moose. There's suggestive violence in this book, but like I said, when I was a child, it didn't bother me, but nowadays, yes. So parents, please make sure you watch this video before you let your child or children read this book with me. That goes for parents. This goes for teachers and grandparents. Please watch this video first before you allow your children to read this with me. So before I read, I'm going to put on my moose glasses on top of my reading glasses, because if I took my reading glasses off, I would not be able to read this. It'd be so blurry. Up at Lake Winnebago, the far northern shore, lives a huge herd of moose, about 60 or more. And they go all around in a big happy bunch, looking for nice tender moose moss to munch. Up at Lake Winnebago, one day they were lunching, just strolling along and enjoying their munching. for the moose mouse that day was especially fine. Then it happened that Thidwick, the last moose in line, saw a bingle bug sitting. The bug called out, "Hey! It's such a long road and it's such a long day. Would you mind if I rode on your horns for a way?" "Of course not," smiled Thidwick, the big-hearted moose. "I'm happy my antlers can be of some use. There's room there to spare, and I'm happy to share. Be my guest, and I hope that you're comfortable there." So the bingo bug picked out a nice, easy seat, and the moose went on looking for moose mouse to eat. Well, an hour or so later, the bug heard a squeak, and he heard a small voice of a tree spider speak. "I say," said the spider, "you've got a fine place. That moose seems quite friendly, have such a nice face. If I got on too, do you think he would mind?" "Hop aboard," laughed the bug, "and I think you'll find that the moose won't object. He's the big-hearted kind." "I accept," said the spider, with joy and delight, and he started a web on the horn to the right. While the spider was spinning, he heard a gay song, and a fresh little zinazoo bird came along. He stopped, and he stared, and he chirped, "Well, well, well! What a smart place to build! What a great place to dwell! I've been living on trees ever since I was born, but here's something new. Why not live on a horn? If there's room there for two, then there's room there for three. There's plenty of room," laughed the bug, "and it's free." Thidwick stopped walking. What was all that talking? These guests had caught Thidwick the moose unawares. "Hey!" he called out, "what goes on there upstairs?" "Just building a nest, sir," the zinazoo said, and began yanking hairs out of poor Thidwick's head. And he plucked out exactly 204. "Don't worry," he laughed. "You can always grow more." Then he dozed off to sleep in his fine moose hair nest. "This bird," murmured Thidwick, "is sort of a pest. But I'm a good sport, so I'll just let him rest, for a host above all must be nice to his guest. Besides, now it's getting quite late in the day, and surely tomorrow they'll all go away." But alas, the next morning, the sun's early light brought to Thidwick's sad eyes a most unwelcoming sight. "Meet my wife," said the bird. "I married last night. And perhaps, by the way, I should mention to you that her uncle is coming to live with us too. You're a very fine host, so I knew you'll be willing." Then the uncle, a woodpecker, started in drilling. All Thidwick's friends shouted, "Get rid of those pests!" "I would, but I can't," sobbed poor Thidwick. "They're guests." "Guests indeed," his friends answered, and all of them frowned. "If those are your guests, we don't want you around. You can't stay with us 'cause you're just not our sort." And they all turned their backs and walked off with a snort. Now the big, friendless moose walked alone and forlorn, with 4 great big woodpeckers holes in his horn. "What holes?" whispered Herman the squirrel, who spied them. "What holes to hide nuts in? Mind if I try them? They're yours, called the woodpecker. Get right inside 'em. This big-hearted moose runs a public hotel. Bring your nuts, bring your wife, bring your children as well. So the whole squirrel family all jumped on pell-mell. And the very next thing the poor animal knew, a bobcat, a turtle, were living there too. Now what a big heart moose going to do? Well, what would you do? What if it happened to you? What would you do if it happened to you? Would you tell all these animals to shoo away, or you're going to be a nice host and that is nice to the guests? If you couldn't stay, scat, 'cause that wouldn't be right. You couldn't shout scram, 'cause that isn't polite. A host has to put up with all kinds of pests, for a host above all must be nice to his guests. So you'd try hard to smile, and you'd try to look sweet, and you'd go right on looking for moose moss to eat. So he's being really nice and still taking in all those animals. But now it was winter, and that wasn't easy, for moose moss getting scarce when the weather gets freezy. The food was soon gone on the cold northern shore of Lake Winnebago. There just was no more. And all Thidwick's friends swam away in a bunch to the south of the lake, where there's moose moss to munch. He watched the herd leave, and then Thidwick knew he'd starve if he stayed here. He'd have to go too. He stepped in the water, then oh, what a fuss. Stop, screamed his guest. You can't do this to us. These horns are our home, and you've no right to take our home to the far distant side of the lake. Be fair, Thidwick begged with a lump in his throat. We are fair, said the bug. We'll decide by this vote. All those in favor of going say A, and all of those in favor of staying say nay. Hey, shouted Thidwick, but then he was done. Nay, they all yelled. He lost 11-1. So he meant 11-1. Let's count those animals up here. There's 11 of them, and he's just one. So let's see. Let's start from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Whew, that's a lot of animals up in his horns. We win, screamed the guests, by a very large score, and poor starving Thidwick climbed back on the shore. Then do you know what those pests did? They asked in some more. Oh man, now they're telling more animals and more bugs to come. Let's see what kind of animals and bugs are coming. They asked in a fox who jumped in from the trees. They asked in some mice, and they asked in some fleas. They asked a big bear in, and then, if you please, came a swarm of 362 bees. Poor Thidwick sank down with a groan to his knees, and then came something that made his heart freeze. Bullets came zinging right past Thidwick's face. Guns were banging, blinking all over the place. Get that moose! Get that moose! Thidwick heard a voice call. Fire again and shoot straight, one and all. We must get his head for the Harvard Club wall. Thidwick took his heels with that load on his head. With 500 pounds on his horns, the moose fled. He could have run faster without all those pests, but a host, above all, must be nice to his guests. I think at this point, I would have been, you all have got to go. I'm sorry, I've tried to be nice, and you're just not being very nice guests to me. So I just can't take this. You're just going to have to go. By this time, that's what I would have done. This moose is so nice. Up canyon, off cliff, over a wild rocky trail, with bullets bouncing around him like hail. Up gully, through gulch, and down slippery sluice, with his hard-hearted guests raced the soft-hearted moose. Then finally they had him, because those pests, he had run out of luck. Because of those guests on his horns, he was stuck. He gasped. He felt faint, and the whole world grew fuzzy. Thidwick was finished completely. Or was he? Finished? Not Thidwick. Decidedly not. It's true, he was in a most terrible spot, but now he remembered a thing he'd forgotten, a wonderful something that happens each year to the horns of all moose and the horns of all deers. Today was the day they would happen to know that old horns came off so that new ones can grow. And he called to the pests of his horns as he threw them. You wanted my horns, now you're quite welcome to them. Keep them yours. As for me, I shall take myself to the far distant side of the lake. And he swam Winnebago and found his old bunch, and arrived just in time for a wonderful lunch at the south of the lake where there's moose moss to munch. Look at all the moose moss. His old horns today are where you knew they would be. His guests are still on them, all stuffed as they should be. So I guess they got them and put them on the wall. That's why I said it depends on your discretion. Adults who are allowing the children to read these books. So again, if you want your child to read that's totally up to you. I'm just giving you warning ahead of time. If you liked that video or this video, please click like, and please, it only takes less than a minute for you to click that you're going to follow this YouTube channel. I try to put out videos, at least a couple of them or more a week. It could be I'm starting to do some more crafting, so it could be that I'm going to have some books and might have a crafting video. So it all depends. If you have any questions, message me through Messenger off of Facebook. The link is below. It is also called Lola's Enchanted Bookshelf page on the Facebook channel. There you can message me if you want me to read a book. I am more than happy to read a book and give you a shout out if you want me to you or to a child or children that you want me to give a shout out to. I can do that in the video. I know I have one so far that when I go to the library next time, I'm going to try to find that book and do a shout out. If you would like for me to make items, if you've checked the links below on some of the platforms where I sell some of my items, I have so many things going on in my head of things that I want to make that relate to books. So if you want something in particular that you want to buy a book for an adult or a child, you want something that might relate to it, but you don't see it on my pages or in my stores that are on the online apps, please message me through Facebook and we can go from there, and I can try to work with you on, things that you might want for the person that you want to give the gift to. So I hope you guys have a good evening. See you next time. Bye.